I'm Guy Emerson. I'll be your instructor today, and we'll be taking up where we left off with the last lesson in Change of Nature, Curriculum 1. This will be Change of Nature 1, Lesson 5. The last lesson that we studied God's change of nature. Today, we're going to be looking at man's change of nature. This is this is the heart of my message. This is what the Lord first gave to us, and this is the theme of everything that I teach. So we're going to put a lot of time into it. Probably will be at least 2 hours, maybe more, because this is, like I say, the heart of the message, the idea, the concept. Is what we really want to stress. So I'm going to be looking at this for a long period of time. Now, to do this right, I need to combine a little bit of history of myself, again, along with bringing you to the point where Lord revealed this to me. So what I would like to do is I'd like to start with the word nature. What we have to do is we have to take this word nature and apply it to ourselves. What is our nature? Well, to better understand it, you remember that we pulled out two definitions out of the Webster's, and it concerned innate and essential qualities of a thing or being. This is how God made it, and this is you got to have it for life. Also, we looked at inherent. This means that the qualities or the character qualities are passed down from father to son, that you inherit your nature as a being. Remember that this definition works on things and beings. Okay? So we're looking at the innate essential qualities of a thing or being. Inherent character qualities of the thing or being. And the way I illustrate this or use this definition here, when we apply it to something, we just use a little exercise to compare two things, and we list 3 or 4 innate, essential, inherent qualities of each thing and compare them. It says that in the last definition, it says that describes and differentiates between things. These qualities describe and differentiate between the two objects, between the thing or being. Now here we have a thing, and here we have a being. Okay, so we're going to compare all of these. Remember, the first one is this guy's hard, and then this one is soft, right? So this one cannot reproduce, no kids, and this one does reproduce, kids. Okay, I'm sure you remember this exercise. Okay, now picking up from here, this is where I want to start. Having done this little exercise, looked at the definition of nature, we're going to have to move on. We move pretty fast. So I want to start here. This is our beginning. Comparing two things and differentiating between them by using the innate, essential, inherent character qualities of a thing or being. Okay, now having compared a rock and a goat here, we come to the conclusion that these two are very different. There's nothing about them that's the same. This nature and this nature are very, very different and cannot be confused. You can easily differentiate between a rock and a goat. Now let me ask you a question here. Is it possible for a rock to become a goat? Can a rock change its nature? Or can the goat become a rock? What do you think? Now, I can hear you now. You're saying, boy, this guy is really stupid. He's got real problems. But no, is it possible to change natures? Can you go into your room and just decide to become an elephant? Or can you go to your closet and close the door and think hard enough to become a millionaire? No, that doesn't seem to be possible. Yeah, I can hear what you're saying, what you're thinking. Your thinking is, this is really stretching the boundary of things, and maybe I don't need to listen to this guy any longer. But when I was a young man, I was in university, and I had gone through a very, very difficult time. And the end of it was that I went to God for answers. I said, things aren't working in my life. Things are coming to an end. I need help. So I didn't know how else to do it. I started going to a church, and I went down to the bookstore and I bought a Bible. Well, the hot-selling new Bible then was called the New English Bible. It's not the New English you got now. This was put out by the Church of England, Church of Scotland, 1950s. And I took it home and I started reading it. Well, on the particular night, I was alone in my apartment. It was dark. It was raining hard. And I opened that Bible up, all alone here with God. I said, okay, God, where do you want me to start reading? And he said, read the book of John. Okay. So I started reading the book of John. And I got to a particular verse. I got to John chapter 12, verses 20 through 28. And I had a train wreck. It was just too much. It was just too big. If you know John 12:20 through 28, you know that it's the story of Jesus just before he dies. A bunch of Greeks come to see him. They don't come directly to him. They came to Philip, and Philip went to Andrew, and Andrew and Philip went to tell Jesus, and they said, sir, there's some Greeks here to see you. Well, when they said that, that was like a milepost, a road sign for Jesus. And what it told Jesus was that he was going to die at Passover this year. This was the year. It told him that he would be dead in a few days. For there was only, I think, 3 or 4 days between his time in John 12 and Passover, that he would become the Lamb of God. Okay? Well, just ask yourself, what would you do if you went to the doctor this morning and the doctor told you you have 3 days to live? What would you do? Would you go hang out with your friends and talk about sports and weather and what's coming next week? Next week doesn't concern you, does it? No. What you would do is you would go to your closest relatives and friends, those closest to you, and you would share with them the most important things on your heart. Well, what did Jesus talk about? If you read verse 23, it says, the hour is come that the Son of Man should be glorified. Verily, verily, I'm sharing my heart with you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat. A corn of wheat? What is he worried about a corn of wheat for? Should fall into the ground and die. It abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. Well, I threw up my hands and I said to God, God, this is too hard for me. This is too much. I don't know what's going on. I don't understand any of this. And I just closed the book. And what I heard back from God was this. He said, Guy, you're going to spend the rest of your life explaining this verse. Wow, that sobered me. That really got my attention. So I sat back down and I opened that Bible up and I said, explain it to me. And for the last few years, that's what he's been doing, is explaining this to me. That I might come to the place where it's not I that live, but Christ that liveth for me. Now, Jesus does not use, Jesus uses seeds to express the most important thing in his life. He says that a seed will remain a seed unless it falls into the ground and dies. When you plant a seed, do you want to get a seed back? Well, you say, yeah, I want a bag of seed. But you don't get a seed back. When you plant that seed, what comes up? Another seed? No. Something happens. There's a major change. You don't get a seed back. What do you get back? You get a corn plant back. Or a wheat plant, okay, in this case. If you plant a seed of wheat, you don't get a seed of wheat. What comes out of the ground is a wheat plant. Something's changed. Something's happened. And this is the revelation that the Lord gave me. But it wasn't as with Christ, where he used a seed. Let me show you what he gave to me. Okay? Now, in our discussion, I was in my opening lesson, we did this. We made a comparison of natures. We compared a rock and a goat. And the way you do that is you list out 3 or 4 innate essential character qualities of a rock and a goat, and you compare them. Well, when you compare these two, you find right away that they're different. There's nothing the same about them. The nature of a rock is exactly the same as the nature of a goat. So the question is it possible to change nature? What did Jesus compare? He used wheat, seed, to wheat fruit. Are these the same? Well, let's look. Hard. What is the fruit of seed? What's the fruit of a seed? When you plant the seed, what do you get back? You get a plant back. So, is the plant hard? No, it's soft. What else is here? Can you tell me? It's alive. Yeah. So is this. This is small. This is large. Is this wheat seed the same as a wheat plant. No, they're different, vastly different. Where does the wheat plant come from? There's something wrong. There's something that has changed. Is it possible for one thing to change natures? Every time I ask this question to my classes or to other people, everyone will say, absolutely, no, nothing can change natures. It was then, as I meditated upon this, that the Lord showed me a picture. This picture is readily available in nature. This picture you will identify with right away. You'll know right away what I'm talking about. When you see this. Now, let's compare these two. Remember how we do this? Can you give me some innate, essential character qualities? What do we got here? This guy's soft. This guy's hard. You might not think so, but if you were to crush this in your hand, he would fall apart. Then how does this guy move? He's got legs. How does this guy move? He's got wings. What does this guy eat? He eats leaves. What does this guy eat? Nectar. Can this guy reproduce? No. How does this guy reproduce? Eggs. Is the nature of a caterpillar the same nature as that of a butterfly? No, not even close. They're vastly, vastly different. Okay? Where does the butterfly come from? He comes from a caterpillar. Just hang on. Let me get through this here, okay? We'll get back to the lesson here. Just let me clean this up a little bit, and then we'll go on. Okay, now I have to ask you a most important question here. And I want you to think about it before you answer. Okay? Well, we'll just take our time here on this one. Now, it is obvious, you know and I know that butterflies come from caterpillars, right? All right? But I also have to admit that the caterpillar does not have the same nature as a butterfly. So what you're telling me is this. What you're telling me is that there is one life, but two natures. One life, but two natures. Now, the way that the caterpillar becomes a butterfly is by going through the cocoon. How long is the caterpillar in the cocoon? Most say 2 weeks or 10 days, something like that, okay? Now I'm going to ask you the most important question here, and you need to ponder. I'm going to ask you, during this 2-week period, is there ever a point where there is an interruption in life? is there ever a break in this life? In my experience teaching this over and over and over, the overwhelming answer is that no, there is no break. It is uninterrupted. So what you're telling me is that there's one life, two natures. If that be true, then you have to admit to me that there is such a thing as change of nature. It is possible. Okay, now let's continue on with the questions and thinking. What the options are on this question is this. If you say to me that yes, there is a break, that there's an interruption, then if you say to me that the caterpillar dies, then I'm going to ask you, if there is a break and the caterpillar dies, where does the butterfly come from? Where does the butterfly get his life? Did I make that clear? The question here is, if the caterpillar goes into the cocoon and dies, where does the butterfly get its life? This is the end of the caterpillar's life. This is the end of him. So where does the butterfly come from? Okay? Yeah. The next option is that no, there's no interruption in life, and that it's one continuous life. Then I'm going to ask you this. If there's this one uninterrupted life, what happened to the caterpillar? Does the caterpillar die? And you have to say yes. Okay. What's the definition of to die? Death. Okay. If there is absolutely no evidence of your life upon the earth, are you alive or dead? Let's say that you were in my class today and that you were returning home afterward, but you never got there. So there's a missing persons report put out. The police go to look for you. They can find no evidence of you. Not a shoe, not a belt, not a shirt, no DNA. You were like beamed up by aliens, okay? You disappear. Well, how long will people continue to consider that you're alive but missing? Well, legally, I think it's 7 years. Okay? After 7 years, you can declare somebody else dead just because there is no evidence of their life. Okay? Well, if the caterpillar is not and the butterfly is the caterpillar alive or dead? And if you say to me he's dead, then I'm going to ask you about this uninterrupted one life. How can the caterpillar die and the butterfly live and it be one life? Do you see the difficulty? The difficulty is in the definitions of dead and alive. Okay? It's a change of nature. The caterpillar dies, the butterfly lives, but there is only one life. The same life that was in the caterpillar is in the butterfly. One life, two natures. Okay, now let's talk about the cocoon. Do you know how the caterpillar changes into the butterfly? It's not mechanical. He doesn't crawl in there and start cutting off legs and then nails on a pair of wings and takes off to be a butterfly? No. Is there any uh, remains of the caterpillar? Do you know how okay, let's do this. Let's talk about how the caterpillar turns into a butterfly. What happens is this. The caterpillar finds his perfect spot and he hangs himself on a particular leaf or limb or whatever, and he begins to spin. And he spins a cocoon, okay? Or he makes a chrysalis out of his outer skin, right? And when he's done, he's got an airtight and watertight container in which he now exists. Now this is important, airtight and watertight. What happens is he cannot tolerate outside influence, and he cannot tolerate the loss of his atoms. You see, this butterfly is made of the exact same atoms as this caterpillar, and it weighs exactly the same. The entire mass of the caterpillar becomes the entire mass of the butterfly. What happens is the caterpillar crawls inside here, he turns himself into a soup, and he rearranges his atoms. This cocoon becomes a chemical factory. Right? A chemical factory. He rearranges all of his atoms. This skin that he has here is made of long chains of molecules, molecules that are long chains of atoms, like plastic. Okay? Well, he takes those long chains and he breaks them down and he turns them into these hard, crystal formed compounds that he builds his wings with, right? But he does it here. He takes all of these molecules, breaks them down into atoms, rearranges the atoms into new molecules, and he makes a different nature. Okay? Now, to do that, he has to be able to control all of the chemical processes involved. So it has to be airtight and watertight. Nothing leaks out, nothing gets in. He controls all of it. So, now, at which point in this chemical factory does the caterpillar stop being a caterpillar, and when do these atoms start being a butterfly? Let's just, what I'm asking you is, when does the caterpillar die and when does the butterfly live? Okay. Let's just ask some questions about the two of these guys here. Okay? Do you think that the butterfly remembers how to crawl? Almost everyone will say no, no. How about this one? Do you think the caterpillar knows how to fly? Oh no, how can a caterpillar know how? No, huh? Well, I'm asking you, if the caterpillar doesn't know how to fly, who teaches the butterfly? You say, oh, it's instinctive and it's in the genes. But I just told you, his DNA changed. Not the same. Not the same. This thing and this thing do not have the same natures. And it's all determined by the chemical molecule arrangement right here. Okay? You're going to have to do better than that. You have to. Let me, let's try one more example. Let's talk about when Have you ever watched a butterfly come out? This cocoon cracks and the butterfly comes out, and he hangs on to this while his wings dry. His wings look like kind of like wet socks. They're all crumpled up and crushed up, and he has to form them into the proper shape. And the way he does this is by pumping them full of liquid. He pumps water into his wings. If you've ever watched it happen, it takes an hour or so, and he slowly pumps his wings full of water to get them to the right shape. And when he gets them to the right shape, he lets that water evaporate out so that they become hard and really, really light. So he hangs there on his cocoon, slowly fanning his wings back and forth until they're fully dry, firmed up and hard, and his muscles are exercised, and he's ready to drop away and fly. Okay? All right. Now let's go back. Got a question for you. Why does a caterpillar have so many legs? Let's just say a caterpillar has 100 legs. Why is it that the caterpillar has 100 legs? It's because of where he lives. Where does a caterpillar live? He lives on the leaves on the end of a branch at the very extreme end of a bush or tree. Well, when the wind blows, that tree moves around quite a bit. And if he doesn't have strong legs and a lot of them to hold on, he's going to get blown off. He's heavy and dense. He's very dense, small, and he has to have many legs to hold on with. He could be blown away very easily, or he could fall to the ground. In either case, he would be dead. Birds would eat him, ants would eat him. He would burst upon falling from the top of the tree. It would be certain death for a caterpillar to fall. So the first rule number one for the caterpillar. Rule number one for a caterpillar is always hold on. Always hold on. Many, many legs, always hold on. Okay? Now, you take this caterpillar and you put him in the cocoon for 2 weeks. He changes his nature, changes all of his atoms, and he comes back out, and now he is this butterfly. Yeah. This butterfly is getting ready to act according to a new nature. His old nature was that of a caterpillar, but we were saying it's one life with two natures. That means that maybe the same brain that was in this guy is in this guy. What do you think? I think he's got more than one brain, but let's just keep playing this out. What is the first thing that God requires of a butterfly to fly? What is the first act required of the butterfly? First thing that God tells him to do. Number one, what does he have to do to fly? God says, okay, fly away. Time for you to act according to your new nature. What's the first thing that this butterfly has to do? The very first thing, first action in flying is to let go. Uh-oh, we have a major problem. What is rule number one for the caterpillar? Rule number one, always hold on. What is required of the caterpillar? First thing, let go. Have you ever thought about this? I'm sure you have, but for me, this is marvelous to behold. For isn't that like God? Isn't it just marvelous? Change of nature. And the first thing, the very first thing that God requires is that you act against the nature you came from. Could you do that? Do you have it within you? What would it take? Do you see where I'm going with this? Okay? Yeah. Now we're going to get really, really personal here. So, can you think of any other animal that changes nature? Well, sure. There's a couple more. How about frogs? Frogs change nature. Okay? There's several more animals that change nature. But there's one very important one that we need to study. There's a certain kind of man that can change natures. Can you think of a kind of man that changes natures? Have you ever heard of a sinner man? What does a sinner man turn into? He turns into a saint. How long does it take a sinner man to turn into a saint? We'll say 1 second, okay? Is there a cocoon for this guy? Do you have a cocoon? Oh yeah. You've got a cross and a tomb. This sinner man must die upon the cross and lie in a tomb before he's risen in Christ to be a saint. I asked you earlier, I said, can the butterfly remember how to crawl? Now I'm going to ask you, can a saint remember how to sin? Oh yeah, oh yeah. He very much can remember how to sin. So do you think that butterfly remembers how to crawl? Oh yeah, he remembers. Now what is it we got to do to demonstrate that these two things are no longer the same? Well, let's compare their natures. Let's compare the nature of a sinner to the nature of a saint. What's the nature of a sinner? He's a liar. He's a thief. He's a killer. But most important, he is only concerned with himself. How about the nature of a saint? Can you give me some character qualities of a saint? Say, oh man, he's holy. Yeah, he is. What does the word saint mean? In English, we use the word saint, but in Greek, that word is hagios. And hagios means holy. Holy one. We are called holy one. We're righteous. We're perfect. But most of all, we have God's nature. And God is love. And that's not love for me, that's love for him. So, what do you think? Is this nature the same as this nature? Oh no, absolutely opposite. They're nothing alike. They're totally and completely different. My question to you is it possible for this to become this? Oh yeah. How does that happen? How is it possible? The same way the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Totally transformed. Okay? Just as this is the same atoms as this. This is the same atoms as this. Same mass, same weight, same atoms, exactly the same. There's no difference. Same here. You see, we don't change on the outside. We change on the inside. This is a physical change of nature. Physical change of nature. But for us, it's a spiritual change of nature. You understand that? So, I ask you now, when does the sinner die? And when does the saint live? At which point? Where is it determined that the sinner is dead and the saint is alive? Is this one uninterrupted life, or is there a break in life? Jesus did not use butterflies. Jesus used seeds. And if you look at his example, it plays out exactly the same. I use butterflies because I can show the cocoon. In Jesus' example, he used seeds. Now, when I was a young man, and we went to school, we would take a cotton ball, put some water in it, and then we would put a seed in it. And we would wait. Each day, we would open the seed. We'd open the cotton ball and look at the seed. Now, after about 3 days, there would be a little root come out. And then each day, this root would get longer and longer, and it would begin to branch out. And then about the 4th or 5th day, there would be a leaf come forward. Okay? And that by the 7th day, usually this stem would put a leaf on. Okay? It's real easy to do. And what we were watching here is the change of nature from seed to plant. What is it that Jesus said in John 12:20? He said, unless a seed falls into the ground and dies, it will abide alone. Now, when they opened up the pyramids in the early 1900s, in one particular pyramid, they found a container of wheat. And they just couldn't stand it. They had to know if these things were still alive. So they took one of the seeds and they planted it. And it immediately sprung to life. 4,000 years. 4,000 years. It had lain in that tomb. And then it springs to life. Unless a grain of wheat fall into the ground and die. What is the purpose of a seed? Well, a seed is made of 2 or 3 parts, but mostly it's 2 parts. There's a hard outer shell called a kernel, and then there's a soft inside called the germ. Okay? The kernel has a purpose, and that purpose is to hold life. The inside is life. So the kernel is built to protect the life within. Its purpose is to hold that life. Well, if the kernel is successful, there will never be a plant. because the seed will never die. It will hold the life within. As long as the kernel is successful, the life is contained within its self. But if this kernel falls into the ground and dies, if the outer edge is broken, if it breaks open, then the life immediately exposes itself, immediately begins to grow. What do you have? If you plant the seed and the seed, the kernel dies. If the kernel dies, what do you have? You have a plant. Okay? This is what Jesus was saying. He said there must be a change of nature. There is no fruit without the kernel dying, the germ springing forth, and there is a plant. Without this change of nature, there is no fruit. He said, but if, he said, if a seed does not fall into the ground and die, it abides alone. But if it dies, if it falls into the ground and dies, if there is a change of nature, then it will bear much fruit. And then he applied it to a man. He said that if a man holds his life, if a man keeps himself, if the kernel is successful to protect himself, then the man will lose his life. That means that if you hold your life within, if you keep your life, then you will lose it. But if you lose your life, that means if you give your life out, if your kernel dies and you release your life, then they will keep your life for eternity. You will bear much fruit. Okay? Jesus used seeds. I use the butterfly to show the same thing. Okay? Now, I want to finish by demonstrating that this example is not a one-time example. Matthew chapter 13, Jesus uses the example of a sower. This is 1 through 9. Okay, and then he explains the parable of a sower. Then he uses the parable of the wheat and tares. Again, it's seeds. So this is one looking at the kind of seeds. There's two different kind of seeds that bear two different natures in the same field. Okay? And then in Matthew 13:31, we have mustard seed. Again, it's a parable of the seed. 3 parables in a row that talk about seeds. What is required for you to understand these 3 parables? You got to see that seeds demonstrate a change of nature. And in verse 31 it says, the kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it's the greatest among herbs. It becomes a tree. Now, here, many people often talk about the size of the seed. And I say to you, don't get caught up in that. It's not a matter of size. It's a matter of quality. Quality. It's not size. They say, well, it was small and then it grew big. And I say to you, it doesn't matter the size of the seed. Have you ever seen an avocado? Huge seed. It grows into a tree too. What difference does the size of the seed make? It doesn't make any difference. What you need is not the size of your faith. It's the kind of faith. Is your faith nature changing faith? Do you have the faith that is strong enough to endure a change of nature? Now up here we see three parables, all using seeds, okay? And each starts off with him saying, the kingdom of heaven is like. But chapter 13 is not even finished. We have a parable in verse 33 of the leaven. Well, what is leaven? Leaven is an agent of change. Verse 44. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure buried in a field. Verse 47. Kingdom of heaven is like unto a net. Verse 45. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant who is seeking goodly pearls. In all of these instances, it's a matter of change. It's a matter of your faith holding to well, I used to be a farmer, okay? And I used to plant a lot of seed. In fact, I'd buy it by the truckload. It was such a pleasure to load that grain drill, and you'd have your hands in tons and tons of seeds. You look at those seeds, and you just want to ask them, like, what are you guys? And if the seeds would say to you, man, I'm a seed, stupid. Put me in, I'm a seed. Can't you see that? Look at me, I'm a seed. Then I would say to you, just take all of those seeds up, put them back in the bag, and send them over. But if you ran your hand through those seeds and you looked at them and said, what are you guys? And the seeds would say to me, I'm an oat plant. Throw me in the ground. I'm an oat plant. Throw me in the ground. Now, that's the one you want to fill the grain drill with and put in the ground. Okay? What I'm asking you is, what is your faith? How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a seed? Or do you see yourself as a plant? Remember back to our caterpillar and butterfly? Let me just ask you, what do you think is an appropriate dream for a caterpillar? Should a caterpillar be dreaming of a bush with 1,000,000 leaves on it? He could never eat all the leaves. Spring never turned into summer. It never dried out. He never got hot. He would stay on that plant forever and eat leaves. Is that appropriate? No. If that were true, that caterpillar would never spin a cocoon. What would be an appropriate dream? If that caterpillar is dreaming of large fields of beautiful flowers, warm sun and a gentle breeze, that guy is going to be a butterfly. That guy already is a butterfly. Now I ask you, what should your dream be? What is an appropriate dream for a saint? Hmm. Hmm. Do you have the faith to endure the cross? Do you have the faith to hold your old man in that tomb that another may live for you? Where does a caterpillar die? In the cocoon. Where do you die? In the grave. You don't get up. It's not you that lives. It's Christ that lives. That caterpillar has to die. He has to die in that cocoon, or a butterfly will never come out. As long as the caterpillar does die in the cocoon, the butterfly will live for him. It takes the caterpillar, or there's no butterfly. But once it's the butterfly, it's the butterfly. The caterpillar has to hold his old nature on the cross, in the tomb, and choose to let the butterfly fly away. Remember the rule number one for the caterpillar? Always hold on. What's the first thing God required of the butterfly? Let go. Can you imagine what happened inside the head of that butterfly? Here you have the, the memory, the old mind of the caterpillar sitting there saying, oh, this is so fun. This is what I waited for all this time. This is going to be great. I'm going to let somebody else um, act for me, and I'm going to get to experience flying. Oh, this is going to be marvelous. So the butterfly says, that's good. Okay, sit down, buckle your seatbelt. We're about to take off. And the caterpillar says, what? He says, I've got to let go here. You need to sit down and buckle your seatbelt because we're going to fly. No, you can't do that. You can't let go. Rule number one for a caterpillar, never let go. And the butterfly says, if you don't shut up and sit down, we'll never fly. If I can't let go, I'll never fly. Does that sound like arguments you may have had in your head? Have you ever had an argument between the sinner man and the saint? And the saint is saying, you need to stay there in the tomb. Just be quiet, lay still, and I'll walk righteously and holy, and we will, Christ will represent himself upon the earth. And what does the old man say? No, you can't do that. That's not my nature. I don't want to do that. And the saint says, but if you don't die, Christ is never going to live. You see, but I can't do that. It's no fun. I don't get to choose. I don't get to walk. I don't get to determine my life. And the saint says, that's right. It's not your life. You choose. Okay. I know this may have been confusing, and you may have to think about this, but that's okay. We're going to keep talking about it a lot. We'll go back over this and over this. And so in the next lesson, we'll continue on. I just want to say to you that caterpillars can't fly. No matter how hard they try, no matter how much they want to, no matter how much they pray, memorize the Bible, no matter how much they act like Christ, they will never fly. It is not God's desire that you remain a caterpillar always. But you cannot live like him. Only Christ can be Christ. Caterpillars don't fly. If you want to fly, you gotta die. Isn't that a great way to end the lesson? Amen. Hallelujah. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you again in the next lesson. Thanks.